All right, Blogging the Boys did the 6 biggest questions that need to be answered here before the start of the regular season. First on the list is kicker, and they've addressed that, bringing in Brett Maher. It'll be Brett Maher and Hiralahu here into the indefinite future, and we'll see how that plays out. Maher was 16 of 18 with the Saints last year or the year before. So I think he's at least serviceable and give you some big kick potential, but we're still waiting for a real solid solution to this problem.
I wonder, guys, if the kicker, I said this with Bobby Belt the other day when we did our podcast, I wonder if the kicker is even on this roster right now, if the opening day kicker is on this roster. Because, Lirim could have some problems. Maher could have some problems. If I'm the Cowboys, I'm keeping an eye on these other teams. As we get going in these preseason games, I am studying every single kicker. Now, whether they make the right decision or not, that's a whole nother thing. But there's a side of me that is not sure that the opening day kicker is on this team.
Well, I would be excited about that. Get somebody else in here if you find somebody becoming available. I think right now I'm just waiting for somebody that's hot. Can you give me a couple of months where you're on fire or something like that until we can, find something else? Wide receiver, these guys have been hot. How much do you trust this production, Brian? What we've seen in Oxnard? I think when it comes to guys like Fehoko and Brown, you can get encouraged by it. But so much of this work, some of these highlights we're seeing are against scrub corners that are never going to play it down on Sundays. So I don't know how much credit you give to them.
Well, that's why I'm interested to see with these receivers going against like the Patrick Surtains and guys like that. That's what I'm interested in. Can you separate from them? These receivers I'm mentioning with Simi and then with Brown, the catches that they've made against Anthony Brown and Diggs and guys like that have been contested balls. But you're right. There's been some separation with some of the backup corners that have been in the games or in the practices, and they've had some success. But for the most part, these guys, I feel like, though, there's been some good battles, even though they're contested battles. But the Bronco practices will tell us a little bit more.
I think in order to understand how great NFL players are, you got to get to Oxnard or get up to the Ford Center. They're going to have practices, I think, on like 25th and 26th or something like that, and they're free. But what you can see is amazing players that aren't going to make the roster. You will swear leaving some of those practices, wow, this guy was amazing. He's going to have this many touchdowns. I'm drafting him onto my fantasy team. And then, like, the rosters get made, and maybe they make the roster but never play. And you're like, wow, you can be that damn good at practice and not be able to even get on the field on Sundays. And I just wonder if Fehoko and Brown are still in that camp, or if they've made that Cedric Wilson journey that rarely guys make, where they go from good practice player to guy who can actually perform in actual games. Brian?
Yeah, I feel like that at least they've made progress to where you can at least, I want to give them a chance. I'll say this again. I think Gallup is probably closer than we believe.
Okay.
If that's the case, then go ahead. You got your one with CeeDee Lamb. People argue with you about that, whether he's a one or not. I think he's a one. So at least it's not going to be receiver by committee. It's going to be you have a legitimate one. We'll see what happens with Gallup maybe in week 2. And then Simi and Brown and those guys, they need to show up. And I think for the most part, from what I've seen, they have shown up in these practices. But if they get in these preseason games and they're getting work, I don't know how much work Dak Prescott's going to get, if any at all, in these preseason games.
That's why, again, Thursday is so important.
Yeah.
Tomorrow and Friday.
I think, like I say, if if they show up Thursday and Friday and we're hearing reports, Dak's finding Simi, Dak is finding Brown, Dak is finding Dalton Schultz, Dak is finding, if that's lines holding up, I will feel so much better about the situation from what I saw even in Oxnard.
It's a great point, and we'll have full reports for you Thursday and Friday and Monday, and again, Broaddus will be out there on Saturday night. Okay, we go to offensive tackle here, and Blogging the Boys writes, there's a couple of problems. Right tackle Terrence Steele has not had a good camp, and swing tackle is a question as well with Josh Ball getting worked a few times. I told you this about Steele the entire way. Anybody with eyes could see it. If you just focus in on Steele, go pull up your NFL Game Pass from last year. When they were having success, he was still getting destroyed. It was just Dak being able to see it coming into the strong side. It was Dak making up for it. And at some point, they decided he's better than Lyle Collins, or maybe that was just a cap decision. I don't know. It was very complicated. But I think they've left themselves highly exposed at right tackle when you could have retained Dak's personal bodyguard there with Lyle Collins.
It worried me the most going into camp. I felt like the left guard situation would get taken care of. I had more problems with the right tackle than anything going into Oxnard. I still do. And it's not just because, playing against Micah Parsons is not easy, but Steele's not even getting out of his stance on a couple of those rushes. And I'm like, listen, the one weapon that he does have is he's a good athlete. He has to get out of his stance in order to work the rusher wide. And if he's not even doing that, then he's no use to you right now, because he's not going to be able to stop. He's not going to be able to stop Parsons from running through him. The one thing he could do is kick wide and push Parsons past the quarterback. But he wasn't even getting out of his stance.
No.
There's a side of me that I'm looking at this and saying, go ahead and play McGovern at left guard and turn around and let Tyler Smith play right tackle, or let him compete for the right tackle spot. See how that works. It's a best five theory, but I feel like that it might be the best way you can. And then you can make Steele the swing tackle if you want. That's what I would do, because I don't see a very good option at right tackle. There's nobody competing with Terrence Steele over there at right tackle. There's nobody pushing him to be better. They love the fact that he comes in early, he stays late. He's gonna be the model player. He's gonna do everything you want him to do.
You have a coach that values the intangibles and the character more than actual talent.
Yeah.
You get one of these old grandpa style coaches who's like, I like this guy. He's working hard, and boy, he really gets after it. I think I could coach him up.
That you're not wrong.
Yeah.
You're not wrong.
It's tough. It really is tough to see this offensive line that was so great now maybe be one of the worst 10 in the NFL this year if they don't get some things developing. But I think they need another draft, possibly using a first rounder next year, and then a little bit of time, and hold your breath that Zach Martin can stand up to the test of time a little bit longer. Okay, up next here, how many pass rushers can they carry? If you're going to keep the 4 defensive tackles, and you have Sam Williams, and you have Dorrance Armstrong, and you have Tank, Chauncey, Basham, Fowler. There's a number of names down there on that defensive line group, and what do you say? Do you keep 10? Is that the limit? How often do they go to 11 if you want to retain some of your talent, Brian?
Hard positions to find when you're talking about offense and defensive linemen. I would keep the defensive tackles over the ends, because I feel like you can go out and get ends. We've seen that with Fowler. We've seen that now. You have the ability with Parsons to play in. Barr can play as a rusher for you as well. So if you have to go, say, 5 and 5, that might be the angle you go with. I would rob from another position to keep offense and defensive linemen. I just would. And maybe you go short at, like I say, the linemen. Maybe instead of 10, you go with 9 or you go with 8. But I'm to the point where I'm just not. The fact that they talked about trading Tristan Hill, I think says something right there.
Because you really have 6 defensive tackles that you want, right?
Absolutely. When you look at him, it's Gallimore, Oso, Digizua, Bohanna, Watkins, Ridgeway, Hill. That's kind of what you're at right now. And you're going to probably go with, I would say you're probably going to go, usually you go 6 ends, 4 defensive tackles. But this time you might have to go 5 and 5.
All righty, it is the GBag Nation. There's some of the big decisions the Cowboys have to make as we wrap up the Oxnard portion of camp. They'll fly back to Oxnard and have one smaller practice next week before getting set for their preseason game. It's against the Chargers, right, in Los Angeles,
yes.
Their second preseason
yes.
game?